All right. Hello, world. This is the Podlair team working on track two voicing stuff, where we are showing our understanding of the theory by sounding off on many of the main topical points. Nice, concise packages. All right. I am Nai G Coach, and with me, I have several other Nai G with me, uh, Ben, Mitchell, and Glenn. So let's just go ahead and just jump right into it. All right. We're almost to the end of the Nai G. Here we go. So, Ben, you'll go first. Here's the first set. How does the hardcore humanist spirit form relate to the overall peak pathway of an IG? What are the parameters that the hardcore humanist uses to customize itself correctly? How does the hardcore humanist support the humanistic detective work native to an IG?
The hardcore humanist is the spirit form that Naiji call on to access the Zai abilities of adaptive logic in a healthy and successful way that supports and promotes the momentum interests of Nai and Ji. In this role, the Naiji hardcore humanist can customize its form depending on logistical considerations of a given situation, but always it must adapt itself to the greater good of helping the Naiji discover new natural law truth and share it with others. As a hardcore humanist as a supporting spirit form in a detective story of the human condition, it largely serves the Naiji by giving dispassionate critique of the case progress so far, and a steely self-control to endure this necessary pain to learn new truth and deep hero needs.
Cool. So, when you are ready.
Okay, I'm gonna give a shot at the hardcore humanist spirit form of the Naiji. Plays the role of I mean, anyway, okay, yeah.
No worries.
You
You
think you
got
got
the
it, and
end
that
at the beginning.
Yeah, it's a little bit
You lost it.
complicated. It's short, but it's a little bit tricky.
the hardcore humanist spirit form of the Naiji calls on the Naiji's Zai abilities of adaptive logic in a healthy and successful way that also supports their momentum powers of Nai and Ji. Um, the hardcore humanist takes shape and form based on the logic of the given situation, but always to further the interests of their momentum powers. Um, the the Naiji hardcore humanist plays the role in detective work of being a, uh, uh, a logical, critic of the, dispassionate critic of the casework so far, while allowing Naiji to endure the pain to learn the truth Naiji needs to learn, and be the hero it needs to be.
Indeed, that truth can be painful. It
Yeah.
burns us. It freezes us. All right, Mitchell, you're up.
All right. All right. Okay, the hardcore humanist is a spirit form that lets the Naishi call on to access their Zai adaptive logic in a healthy and successful way that supports and promotes the momentum side of the Nai and Ji sides of the story. The parameters that the hardcore humanist uses to customize itself are going to depend on, well, it can customize itself depending on logistical considerations of the situation, but the specific parameters that it must adapt itself for the greater good is helping the Naishi to constantly be discovering new natural law truth and sharing it with the tribe. The hardcore humanist supports the humanist detective work native to the Naishi by giving dispassionate critique of the progress that their case has made so far and a steely self-control to sort of stay on rails and endure despite any pain that comes from learning new truths or anything that would deter them from doing proper heroic conduct.
Boom, credit received. Glenn, take us home.
All right, just a moment. It's
No worries.
yeah. Alright, so the hardcore humanist is the spirit form that the Naiji calls on to access their Zai abilities, which helps them to basically refine their two major powers of Nai and Ji, but always it's trying to make sure that it's taking the self-interests of the Nai and the Ji into consideration above its own considerations. The parameters that the hardcore humanist uses to customize itself correctly have to do with making sure that, depending on whatever the situation might be, it's always trying to, customize itself to the logistical aspects of the situation as much as possible. But always its main goal is to keep the greater good in mind, which is the Nai desire to want to find new natural law truth and to then share that with other people. The way in which it supports the Naiji and the humanistic detective work that they're trying to do all the time is in that the Zai hardcore humanist for the Naiji is always bringing in critiques to help adjust the Naiji's understanding of truth. And in order to also help it do that, it gives it the sort of unflappable strength that it needs to endure some of the harsh realities that the Nai and the Ji will bring to it, mostly from the Nai because that's the perception. But being able to then withstand that in order to be the hero that the peak pathway needs in order to move forward.
Indeed. And it even gets to the G sometimes. You might have a natural truth from Nai, but then the, say, ideal way to deliver it with your G is like on top of that mountaintop in the freezing rain. You're like, can't do it another time? No, gotta do it then. That'd be the coolest, most effective way. So your Zai's like, okay, keep it together, keep it together. All right, next up, Mitchell, you'll go first this one.
Fair.
How does hardcore humanists critique the progress of the Naiji? How does the hardcore humanist relate to dissociation? How does the Zai of the hardcore humanist prepare the Naiji for more real-world engagements?
All right. The hardcore humanist critiques the progress of the case so far by adding clear-headed deductive reasoning to the detached abductive reasoning that Naiji natively possess, giving them an incredibly powerful problem-solving dual engine. This can be taken to a healthy extreme by degrees of dissociation, which is the highest natural outflow through Naiji without regard to its implications to the world or the people in it, which gives the greatest insights, but is obviously a process that must be used responsibly. Naiji use their Zai to comprehend their visionary insights in some kind of logically consistent way that will stand up to the rigors of testing and pushback. Right. The hardcore humanist critiques the progress of the Naiji and their cases by adding a clear-headed deductive reasoning to the detached abductive reasoning the Naiji more natively possess, which gives them this awesome problem-solving dual engine. The hardcore humanist relates to dissociation because with their Nai and the Zai, they can take their dissociation to once the Zai is added, to a healthy extreme degree that lets the highest natural law flow through it because it's not worried about, or it's not going to not see truths just based on implications it would have for people or implications it would have for the way the world is. And this gives greater insight, but it has to be used responsibly. And the Zai, the hardcore humanist, prepares the Naiji for more real-world engagements because it lets them understand their insights in a logically consistent way, which can withstand testing and pushback.
Boom. Glenn, you're up.
All right. So the Naiji hardcore humanist critiques the progress of the Naiji and the case that they're working on by adding in a deductive reasoning which complements the abductive reasoning that their Nai natively has as well. So that Nai and Zai abductive and deductive ability allows them to like zoom out and zoom in this very interesting way, which is very powerful. It creates this dual engine, which is incredibly useful when it comes to cracking down on a case and like figuring it out. The way in which it relates to their disassociation is that the Nai and Zai also, when they work together, can allow the Naiji to detach from the world around them and completely remove themselves from the people and the world so that they're able to just go into this sort of like very deep visionary wilderness kind of jungle of their Nai and their Zai, which allows them to see the pureness of the truth as clearly as possible without any sort of attachments. And that can be really extreme, and it's meant to be done in a very healthy way, although Naiji need to make sure that they use that in a responsible manner so that it doesn't just go off the rails and just they never come back from that or whatever. And lastly, the way in which the Naiji hardcore humanist prepares the Naiji for their real-world engagements is because the Nai is very detached, and it's in this kind of like fantasy world, and it needs to have the Zai come in to add some realism, which isn't like the realism, but it needs to be given some sort of like hard lines that it can use to like allow itself to get into the V of it, but it's done more in this like it kind of prepares them for the real world by giving them those tracks that the Zai has, and making their visions more clear and more crystal and more just mathematical. It's sort of like a bridge for their Nai fantasies and then the V realities. It sort of acts like a little bit of a bridge that way. So yeah.
Good. Yeah, I like that phrase used there, hard lines, because that's kind of what it is. It's sort of like in your simulator, you have the fantastical version, and then it's like before you go to play in the real world, it's like let's do the simulator again and see if we pass. And so you don't actually really crash, but the simulator will tell you fail, fail. It tells you with the Zai, like if you tried that, that would fail, and so it gives you that little tough love. Better than having happen to the V though, because the V's like that's for real. You can't take that back. The Zai, you're like, okay, let's take that back and try again. All right, Ben, take us home.
The Naiji hardcore humanist critiques the progress of the Naiji by adding clear-headed deductive reasoning to Nai visionary abductive reasoning, giving them a very powerful double engine. This relates to dissociation because with the Nai the night visioning, the night abductive reasoning, channeling highest truth, they can combine that with the Zai, with the disregard for the the humanistic kind of implications, and that gives them the clearest headed insight. But this needs to be used responsibly. The Naiji hardcore humanist prepares the Naiji visions and gives them logical consistency, so they are prepared for testing and pushback from the real world.
You got it. All right. Next one up is going to be for you, Glenn. Lead on. All right. So how does the hardcore humanist reactively influence the emotional state of the Naiji? How does the hardcore humanist proactively bonus stack the Naiji? With the focus on emotional control that the hardcore humanist has, what is something Naiji need to watch out for?
Alright, so the hardcore humanist helps Naiji reactively control their intense emotions and mood swings such as fear, rage, sadness, longing, and so on. This control can also proactively bonus stack the Naiji while enacting their personal story to improve how smooth, deft, and measured it is done. With its focus on emotional control, Naiji need to make sure their hardcore humanist is not being faux-zen in a beta fashion, or being dismissive in a sour groups fashion, or being vicious in a domineering fashion.
Sour groups?
Grapes? Is it
Grapes.
No worries.
Sour grapes.
Oh, I got to figure that. Thank you. Catch that. Grapes.
Oh, that's what that meant. I was wondering.
No,
Second sour group there.
Sour grapes. Grapes.
Whole group is sour.
Yeah, the whole group is like.
Well, I update the master copies.
Okay. So the hardcore humanist allows the Naiji to, whenever in a reactive sense, it allows them to control their moods in a very powerful way, whether it be rage, fear, anger, or longing. And that's very much done in a reactive way, because those moods will come on them and then they'll react to them and control and steer how they react to those emotions when they come on them, basically. In a more proactive sense, it can allow the Naiji, the hardcore humanist, it can allow the Naiji, when they're being more proactive, to sort of steer how they deal with situations as they're moving forward, by sort of adding a little bit of a smoothness, a little bit of a deftness in the way that they handle situations and the way they speak, the way they do whatever it is that they do in their warm wizard-like fashion. And also, with the focus on emotional control that the hardcore humanist has, something that they need to watch out for is that they can sometimes, the hardcore humanists can sometimes make it so that the Naiji, if it's done in a poorer fashion, they need to watch out for like being like faux zen or beta, and also at the same time, in a very domineering fashion, they need to watch out for kind of like adding this sort of very harsh critiquing kind of quality, which can be seen as sort of like a sour grapes quality, I guess you could say, and that's when it's done poorly. And so they need to make sure that they don't come off like really like aggressively edgy or like very kind of dismissive in a very harsh kind of angry, mean kind of way, which like a cold shoulder kind of way, and at the same time also not be so sort of like wifty that they don't even have any strong substance to them.
Cool. Yeah, with the Nye has a great buy in its way as well. To have control. Control is a big deal. It should be control using the Xi, but sometimes Xi can feel a little uncontrolled. So Zai sometimes can fool the Nye Xi into thinking like I'm more in control, and that does feel good. It's an illusion, but the illusion of more control can be very appealing. Ben, you're up.
Yeah, yeah. The hardcore humanist of the Naiji allows the Naiji to reactively control a lot of their mood swings and emotions, such as rage, fear, anger, sadness, and so on. This can bonus stack to the Naiji to allow them to move in a slower, more deft, fashion in how they move people and how they engage in encounters and so forth. Hence it being very good modulator for the Xi. This emotional control for the Naiji, something to watch out for is being faux zen, where you're basically kind of take a I don't really care about life and the world and so forth approach, and be very beta. They also need to watch out for being overly dismissive towards people, just being dismissive where they shouldn't be, being too hard on certain things, when it's not really warranted. And also, Naiji need to watch out for being overly domineering, using like their shields to just be too kind of defensive, in certain situations to try and take control.
Indeed. Yeah, because one that comes up a lot is that even though it's not necessarily the right thing to do in the bigger picture, a lot of people can't catch Naiji on this, is if you're astute, you can use your Zai to almost cut down anything anyone puts forward.
Yeah.
If they try to convince you, like, maybe you should change this way, Naiji, should I? Zai. Now take that back. They were even right, but you just slice it so bad, like, never mind.
Yeah, because it's like it's easy to apply criticism to like anything. Like, I mean, there's always things you can like if you take anything substantial, you can always find things to apply criticism to it. But that generally speaking, or in most cases, that isn't going to be enough to just like completely cancel everything about what they're saying.
Right, there's still merits in there.
So you still have to recognize the points that they are getting right, even if you are finding valid criticisms what they're saying, or at least you think so.
Exactly. You're saying something, Glenn?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yes, sometimes Naiji, like we can, like I've noticed with other Naiji as well. We can be really like elitist, hardcore. Like,
oh yes.
Sometimes a person might say something which is like a little bit of false, right? There's like a little bit of a little mistake that they made, and we can like really like get on that and be like, no, this is, and it can sort of overwhelm people because they were not expecting that kind of like critique being thrown at them, and in this very like powerful way, which is like so like like canvassed and heavy, and it's like, whoa, you know, it's it can really come off that way sometimes.
You can shut down people even at that good points because the critique is just so on. And if you give critique that's so strong, they'll what merits they thought they had that are even there, they'll forget it. You can just crush their confidence. You can just totally like
Yeah, that's something that one has to be careful of, because it's sort of like you want to critique them and you want to maybe add a little bit of an adjustment, but you want to do it in a very deft fashion. You want to be very sensitive to like how it is that they're going to take it. And you know, this is something that I learned on a constant basis because I have to deal with people.
for all actually, for sure.
Yeah, it's just something that one has to be really careful of. And I think our other really appreciates when we are able to handle those kinds of situations correctly and in the most friendliest, most smoothest kind of way, which oftentimes it doesn't require us to be so hard on people like that. It just means like maybe saying one thing, like, are you sure? And then that sort of like gets people to go in the right kind of direction that they need to in order to then entertain ideas that will lead them to where you are, and then you can kind of like make such a better connection that way. So yeah, I really like that.
For sure. All right, Mitch, you gonna bring us home?
Sure. I forgot to put it down. Knew better before. All right. I think I got it. Okay, the hardcore humanist reactively influences the emotional state of the Nai-Ji by letting them control their mood swings and passions such as fear, longing, sadness, rage, etc. And it can also proactively, instead of reactively, bonus stack the Nai-Ji by, when they're enacting their personal story, doing it in a particularly smooth, deft, and measured way. It just makes it more effective. And then the Nai-Ji also need to watch out, though, for a few things that the Zai can give them, such as being Fozen in a beta way, which gives them sort of a false sense of control, being dismissive in a sort of sour or bitter way, just hurts someone's feelings, or being vicious in a domineering way, so giving like a critique that's so harsh that it doesn't really even necessarily get rid of all the merits of what they're saying, but it's just so harsh that it just sort of shuts people down.
Boom. Got it. All right. Back to you, Ben. Here we go. How does the hardcore humanist help Nai-Ji with controlling their body? How does this relate to physical activity? How does the hardcore humanist relate to active trance states?
The hardcore humanist also helps Nai-Ji with control in a more bodily context, such as nerves or the adrenaline dump that comes from intense visceral experiences, which Nai-Ji are more prone to than other mojos due to their sensitivity to stimulus. If relevant to their story, Zai helps Nai-Ji to understand the principles at play in a given physical activity in order to practice and predict it in the simulator, gaining situational advantage in the real world. Also, if an activity is extended in duration, the hardcore humanist can go into an active trance state, where the Nai-Ji is skillfully hypnotized by the sublimely playful logic the natural law infuses into each moment of reality. Interesting. So are trance states more associated with the hardcore humanists than the other pod power spirit forms, or?
Well, the trance states. I mean, obviously the Nai is going to be in there as well because the detachment, the G is the enactment part. But kind of like in sports, like Mitchell playing tennis or something of that nature. Martial arts, anything at all. They can be a bit nerve-wracking, especially if it's a competitive environment. But one thing Zai can do is there's a pleasure in climbing a mountain right, in hitting a perfect serve, in having the perfect footwork. And sometimes that calm, cool pleasure in the perfection of it, you can kind of like stay in this very effective dream state while having some pretty gnarly stuff happening around you, which is really cool.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sort of like you're the eye of the storm.
Exactly like that. You feel calm and good.
When you feel like you have sureness, you're on strong footing. Like no matter what's going on around you, you are able to track everything correctly and understand it to where you're not bothered by it at all. And that's where the confidence comes from.
Sure, and the Zai in a moment-to-moment way lets you know if natural law agrees. Because if you're like, say, 9G, you have an idea in your head, you're enacting it to try to win something, and then the serve keeps hitting right on the line, just where you want it. That's like the Zai keeps feeding back, like, yup, your hands are where it's supposed to be, your legs are where it's supposed to be, your head space is where it's supposed to be, because otherwise you would fall off, but you're not. And so by not falling off, it tells you, me and natural law, you're dialed in.
Yeah. And eventually it gets to a point where it's kind of like a little bit boring, and you're looking for like.
But there's always that not too much problem because you can always crank up the V gnarly until you fall off. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like once you get to where you're like, I'm definitely not going to fall off now, then you kind of have to crank it up because it's more exciting when there's like that edge, like I might not make it, and then when you do, you're like, yes.
Yeah. Because then you know you're moving forward and you're growing when you're always pushing it a little bit more. Always there has to be a little bit of a feeling of like, I don't know, this feels a little bit crazy. But
it's actually a combination of two energies there. One is when you're talking about, which is like internally, you do want to feel like you're pushing an envelope and that the Zai has to keep working harder and harder to stay on these rails. But there's also pleasure in when you're doing something of any kind that the arc of it just is generally challenging. And you're looking around, and everyone else is like, you're like, you feel pretty cool. You know what I mean? Everyone else is falling apart, and you're not. You're like,
yeah.
Yeah, again, that gets back to the other one about not overdoing it, because you'd be like, geez, people, it's only 1,000-mile-an-hour fastball. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It's like, you're different, dude. You've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah.
You just started.
I mean, and that's like why Naiji need like to have like Zai that's so like specialized for the Naiji, because like the Nai in the G, gives it we're natural record breakers, so like only the hardcore humanist could store the kind of like gnarly shit the Naiji throws at it,
Sure.
Dumps. The Naiji hardcore humanist helps the Naiji with the gnarly adrenaline dumps that comes with the Naiji HSP and so forth. The Naiji, when they put physical activity in their simulator, they can predict they can use logical principles to better predict how things will play out and so forth, and that can make them much stronger in physical activity. The Naiji can also get into intense trance states where they're sort of one with the with the logic, the playful logic that natural law is feeding into them.
Oh, cha-ching. Mitchell.
Alright. The hardcore humanist helps an IG with controlling their body because they're going to get nerves and adrenaline dumps from intense visceral experiences that they have, which they're prone to because of their sensitivity. The adrenaline dumps and the nerves, that is. And the Zai can help deal with that and smoothen it and whatnot. Hardcore humanist relates to physical activity in general because the Naiji can use it to understand the logical principles at play in a physical activity and basically sort of play it out and predict it how things would go in their simulator so that they can gain situational advantages when it actually occurs in the real world. It relates to active trance states because if physical activities have a kind of extended duration to where they could sort of set into the trance state, then the Naishi can get sort of slowly, or I guess quickly, hypnotized into just the playful logic that comes with doing a visceral, the kind of visceral activity perfectly, such as hitting a tennis stroke or running, even.
Yep. Anything that has a logic to it, which is everything. If you're doing it right, you'll feel good. Naturally, I was like, yep, that guy knows what he's doing, or gal. All right, Glenn, take us home.
All right. So the hardcore humanist helps the Naiji when it comes to controlling their body, because Naiji are very, very sensitive creatures, and they have a lot of HSP, and that can give them sort of twitchiness energy that they always just have. And their hardcore humanist will allow them to then stylize that energy in a way where they're able to sort of like handle any kind of adrenaline rushes or any kind of like intense situations that might come on them, or feelings or anything like that, so that they're able to, like stabilize and not allow those things to sort of like influence their body in a way, sort of like in any kind of negative way. Like, they might be in a poker room or something, and they need to like play the dice or whatever in a very specific way, and they can't allow their hands or their face to show any kind of they can't give themselves away. And so their Zai is very powerful when it comes to like holding them still and like controlling their facial movements and everything like that, so that they're able to not give anything away like that, stay unflappable. When it comes to physical activity, if the Zai is relevant to the story that the Naiji is trying to enact, it can help them to draw out the principles that are in play in a given physical activity, so they're able to then understand the principles and then gain this kind of like situational awareness, understanding of whatever is going on, and be able to sort of like predict whatever it is that is going to happen in a very situational way, because they're able to draw that into their simulator and then use that to then come up with scenarios that they're able to then try out in real life. And the way in which the hardcore humanist relates to their trance states is that it actually allows them to go into like a mountain climbing Naiji or something like that, where there's like something crazy, like in the situation that they're in, they're able to sort of like just note, like if they're playing tennis, for example, or if they're in some kind of like a fight, they happen to be an MMA fighter or something, it's sort of in a playful way, they're able to just take note of the fact that there's a certain kind of logic and flow of everything that goes on around them, and they're able to sort of like move and like understand in a very like I know that this guy is only able to do these kinds of moves, and depending on whatever move happens, I know exactly how to react and then counter. And there's a sort of like a sublime quality to that, being able to know and stabilize depending on whatever it is that might happen in a situation, and then respond. And that can apply to any kind of situation. It could be tennis, it could be MMA, it could be mountain climbing, and it just gives the Naiji sort of like a sense of intense control and confidence, and which is really cool. And that's how that relates to their trance states. And it very much is like a trance because they're just flowing through it all, just taking note of it in this sort of like detached manner, but at the same time being awed and moved by it.
Good. All right. Boom, boom. This might be the last beat here. Yep, it is. Mitchell, you'll go first.
Okay.
What?
I said okay.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. How does the hardcore humanist generally relate to the concept of the system? What specific systemic ranking is of most importance to the hardcore humanist? How does the hardcore humanist often influence other people, and why?
Okay. The Naiji hardcore humanist is usually focused on how to beat the system rather than work or play with it, as its logical goals are highly progressive and humanistic in nature. The hardcore humanist prefers to help Naiji use logical principles and full restraint to get great grades from the imaginative empathic scoring system of their unconscious Nishai genius. As part of this, people of virtue and integrity often be impressed by and feel safe because of the stilliness the hardcore humanist gives the Naiji, making it so they are able to hold their noble course and their sacred ground in unflappable service to their deepest held beliefs and their dearest friends. So the hardcore humanist generally relates to the concept of the system by not working with it or playing with it in the usual sense, but usually trying to beat it because its goals are more progressive and humanistic in nature. As a part of that, it's not going to be as directly focused about getting great grades in the usual sense, but it is going to be focused on getting great grades through its logical principles and its restraint from the Nijai unconscious, inspirational, imaginative, empathic genius. The hardcore humanist often influences other people because it gives the Naiji a steeliness in holding the course that they've set and the ground that they hold in service to their deepest held beliefs and their dearest friends.
Boom. Bit received. Glenn?
Right? Just one moment. All right, so the Naiji hardcore humanist is focused more on trying to beat the system as it currently tends to be in this whatever like the world's scoring system as far as that goes. Trying to beat that rather than play with it or trying to adopt it because it's trying mainly to uh, it's mainly interested in trying to achieve the goals that their Nai and their Ji has, which is to be more progressive and naturally also trying to be more because the system tends to ignore these things that the Naiji naturally have as on them, like they focus on these things, which is you're trying to be progressive and also trying to be like in it's sort of like an ethical code about them as far as like the way in which the Z kind of comes out into the world. And they are very much attached to those, and they want to make sure that the system agrees to that. And usually in the real world, it doesn't do that, so they oftentimes have to make it so. And so when it comes to scoring, naturally they're not interested, or they don't really care about the scoring that the world puts on them. But they are very much interested in the scoring system that their Nijai other gives them, because it's a Z that comes from first the Ni and then the Jai, and when the Naiji do that, then it also causes other people to feel really safe and respected when they're around the Naiji because they know that the Naiji is taking those things into consideration, which gives them this sort of like very wise and empathetic quality, and they're influenced by that, and they admire that about the Naiji.
Cool. Ben, bring it home. Yeah, because a lot of people, you may have good ideals, but sometimes when the rubber hits the road, it can be hard to stay on course. So when people see someone choose a higher, more difficult way, and they don't come off of it, it's impressive.
It is, yeah. I know a lot of people that they tried to do something that was very noble, and they kind of like gave up on it. But then when I realized that it was very important, then I started doing it. Not to brag or anything. I just like I'm gonna do this. And I made that kind of like a way for that in the world, and it can sometimes lead to jealousy, but then also at the same time it can be very admirable. People will take note of that and be like, you know what, that person was able to do it, so that inspires me to want to do it too, and work together. So,
Yeah, it makes them want to do it and lets them know it's doable. It can be done. One human did it.
yeah, one person did it, and even though it is hard, and even though it is kind of like tricky, and you face a lot of challenges along the way, you're able to then accept those challenges and then move forward on them, and not just sort of like allow them to, crush you in a way.
Indeed. All right, Ben, bring us home with this. This will wrap up this pitch.
The Naiji hardcore humanist is generally trying to challenge or beat the system rather than work or play with it. As the Nai and Ji of the Naiji are very are much more anti-establishment. They're momentum powers. So despite having Zai, because it takes a lower position than those, that's the form that Naiji Zai will take, and so the hardcore humanist will take. The ranking that the Naiji tends to see as the highest is not really the ranking from the real world, but rather the ranking of their spirits, and most importantly, their Nijai unconscious genius, Nijai unconscious genius's scoring for their dispassion logic. The people will often be of great virtue and integrity, will often be impressed and feel safe with the Naiji steeliness, because it will allow them to hold to their values and beliefs in their sacred ground while being dedicated to their highest visions and their closest friends.
Sweet. All right, on to the next one. Full-on fanatic. Here we go. Delaney will take lead on this first one. What is the full-on fanatic? How does it relate to personal performance? What is involved in this process? How does this relate to activities Naiji generally choose to do? How does a full-on fanatic relate to reality and spirituality?
The full-on fanatic is the V power spirit form that Naiji channel when visceral and aesthetic rituals need to be done. As a full-on fanatic, the personal performance standard is often to do the best one possibly can, which can't be really known until it is done with every fiber of one's being. This process will break and remake the Naiji into a new, higher version of themselves, which can be an extremely painful or pleasurable experience. Naiji generally choose activities that honor their higher processes, even if it may seem to others like odd or arduous stimulus to seek out. Although V is associated with reality, the artistic and spiritual disposition of Naiji makes it so they still intrinsically understand reality through their various spirit forms, which tends to be very fantastical and visionary.
Indeed. All right, when you're ready.
All right. Let me try and attempt this. So basically, the full-on fanatic is the spirit form associated with the Naiji's V, which is very much something that the Naiji use in order to sort of like understand aesthetic and real-world stimulus kind of activities or things of that nature. Very anything that has to do with the reality, basically. That's when they typically are using the full-on fanatic. The way in which it relates to their personal performance is that I guess you could say like the perspective that the full-on fanatic has is that you won't really know what's possible, what's doable until it's actually done, and done in a way where you summon the most highest, most all of yourself into a certain activity or anything like that in order to see what is physically possible, physically capable of being done, which Naiji as hunters are very, hardcore in that way because they're just like they funnel all their energy to try and like summon as much as they can into doing something and like really hitting it hard with a V. Um, Typically, what's involved in the process is that the Naiji will oftentimes have to constantly break and remake themselves in order to take themselves to the most highest spiritual level that they can possibly attain, which can be either very painful or a very, very pleasurable kind of experience. Um, and how this relates to the sort of activities that they choose is that Naiji will choose the activities that their spirits say that they're basically that they need to do in order to take their story to the next level, and that usually tends to be very odd sort of things that their spirits say that they need to do, like maybe they need to do something very arduous for a very extended period of time, and other people might look at that and be like, what are you doing? That's weird. Like, that's a waste of time. But it's actually something that their simulator, their spirits are like really into, and they can see something valuable in that activity, which is why the Naiji is being forced to do it, and that's why they're doing it. And so once they do it and they do it correctly, then they'll be able to get those insights, and then other people will be like, oh, that's why you did that. I get it now. And when it comes to how the full-on fanatic relates to reality and spirituality, is that even though V is very, very heavily associated with reality, it is still a sense of reality that comes from the powers of their Nai and then their Ji and then their Zai, which paints or flavors their V in this sort of like very conceptual, fantastical, sort of like romantic kind of way, which is then very different, like very Frazetta kind of like V. That's what that is. It's not sort of like just V as in sort of this is a V activity. It very much has that quality of being impressionistic in a sense, an artistic sense to it. And that's basically the kind of V that they have, and that's how their V full-on fanatic comes out and impacts the world and how it comes off.
Good. All right, Ben?
All right, let's see here. The Naiji Full-On Fanatic is the Power V spirit form that the Naiji call on to channel the visceral and aesthetic energy. This relates to personal performance, and that Naiji always want to do something as best as can be done, and that can only really be known by doing it. And through this process, the Naiji remake themselves to be a stronger and higher form than they were before, and this can often be either painful or very pleasurable. The Naiji will generally choose activities that are most interesting to themselves and their higher spirits, and these may very well be activities that other people find weird or arduous, but are very important to them and their spirits. The Full-On Fanatic is very much so associated with reality, but the way Naiji experience reality is in a way that that involves a great amount of spiritual dialogue.
Got it. Credit received. Mitchell, take us home.
Full-On Fanatic is the power spirit form of the Naiji associated with their V, which they use to deal with visceral and aesthetic rituals. It relates to personal performance because one of the kind of sayings of the full-on fanatic, one of its sort of main things is putting every fiber of its being into what it does. And related, the personal performance standard for full-on fanatic is doing the best that one can, and you can't really know the best that you can do until you've actually put every fiber of your being into that. This process of putting every fiber into your being in the full-on fanatic will break and remake the Naiji, and this can be a very pleasurable thing, can be a very painful thing, but it is nonetheless very important. Naiji generally choose to do activities that honor their higher spirits, so that means that they can choose activities that might seem odd or arduous from a visceral perspective to other people, but they're still going to get a lot of value out of doing it, because while they're doing this sort of odd or arduous thing, they're getting all this energy from their higher processes and their spirits that they're honoring. So the full-on fanatic relates to reality because it's the spirit form. So the is the concept of how it deals most directly with reality. But since the Naiji naturally understand things in a more conceptual, romantic, artistic sort of way, then that imbues their understanding of reality. So they're understanding reality, but the reality is sort of intermingled with their spirit forms.
Good. Alrighty. Next up, then you'll go first in this one. How does a full-on fanatic operate at the Mazout level? How does this relate to the personal beliefs of the Naiji? How does this relate to the real-world experiences of the Naiji?
At the Mazout level, the full-on fanatic can be seen in the Naiji propensity for geeking out in order to really give something a go and take it as far as it can go. Being the best embodiment and producer for one's beliefs requires the Naiji not only master their Ji code of conduct, but also their V physical performance. By living out what interests their higher processes and pursuing the world, Naiji are physically enacting their noble ideals and becoming a more enlightened hero, which was only made possible because of the necessary real-world experiences that are being had. Physically enact their ideals. Awesome. Awesome. The pretty full-on fanatic for the Naiji with the Mazu can be seen in the Naiji's propensity to really give something a go and taking it as far as it can go. The Naiji to best embody their beliefs is necessary that they both master their G code of conduct as well as their B physical performance. The Sorry, I have to look at the last sentence again. My process is world magic physical inactive. Really get something going for this person, really. At the Mazut level, the Naiji full-on fanatic can be seen in the Naiji's propensity for geeking out and really taking something as far as it can go. The Naiji, in order to be the best embody their personal beliefs, they need to not only master their G code of conduct, but also their B physical performance. Naiji, when they geek out on the things that interest them, God, don't know it.
Try again. No worries. No worries.
It's like it's there, but then it's gone.
Knowledge is so slippery.
Yeah.
Stand by.
Yeah. At the Mazut level, the Naiji full-on fanatic can be seen in the Naiji propensity for really geeking out in what interests them and taking it as far as it can go. The personal beliefs of the Naiji, in order to best embody them, comes with both mastering their code of conduct, but also their B physical performance. The Naiji, when they really get into something and really attempt to embody and really experience it, they're embodying their highest. They're really they're taking their ideals.
You can do it. Focus. Focus. You can do it. Take a moment. Look again.
Something about ideals.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're enacting.
You can see it in a different way.
Sometimes it's just
I
like
don't have
one
to say
look
exactly what it says.
you up. It's like.
Think of it this way: it's not enough to just the Naishi have to walk. It's not enough to just talk the talk. They have to walk the walk as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway, Glenn. All right. The Naiji full-on fanatic at the Mazuta level, when they really get interested in something, they often want to take it as far as they can go, and that's often how it's expressed at the Mazu level. the Naiji with their personal beliefs, in order to best embody them, they need to not only master their G code conduct, but also be physical enactment, physical. Um, the Naiji, when they get really into something and they really want to experience it, it's they're living their not their highest ideals and indulging in the visceral experience in such a way that it makes them become a more enlightened hero.
Alright. Got it. You did it. Kind of like James Bond's first kill. Don't have to be pretty, just get it done.
Yeah.
Bulldog that one. Alright.
It honestly just feel like speaking words, even though you like it almost sounds like gibberish, but not quite. I don't know.
It was actually making sense.
Yeah.
You were like saying a fragment, then a fragment, then a fragment. I was like, it got there. It got there.
It's like the fish that's like nibbling on the rod. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, you're up, Mitchell.
Yeah. My turn. Just die. Just kidding. Alright. The full infinite operates at the Mazut level because the Naishi really have a propensity for something called geeking out, where they really get into an activity and try to take it as far as it can go and really sink in deeply to a certain Mazut or role. Kind of become one with it on a level. But this relates to the first release of the Naiji because the Naiji, as part of their personal beliefs that they need to embody, they can't just... They want to be the master of their personal beliefs, and that involves more than just mastering their code of conduct and how they treat people, but also mastering their ability to physically enact and perform according to their beliefs. This relates to real-world experiences for the Naishi because they're living out what it is that their higher spirits demand of them in the real world, and this brings their noble ideals into reality. It really tests them in a deep way, and this lets the Naishi reach a greater level of enlightenment than they would by just simply having a belief, however firmly. Really actually going out and enacting it with real-world experiences, pushback, etc. Tests it on a much deeper level.
There you go. Glenn, take us home.
Alright, so with the full-on fanatic and how it operates in terms of the on a Mazut level, it comes out for the Naiji in a very interesting way, in the sense that a Naiji can be... It's very casual, but at the same time they approach it with a very serious quality as well, where they'll want to take an activity and they'll want to take it as far as it can go, but they want to give it a go in the first place. They want to actually try it out. They want to try it out, give it a go, give it a shot, and see what they can do with it. But at the same time, there's a sort of frenzied quality, a little bit of let's push the limits. As far as let's try and take it further and further as well. When it comes to their personal beliefs, it's not enough to simply master their G code of conduct to where they're able to express themselves in terms of words and their code of conduct and all that sort of stuff and like monologues and these kinds of things, which is has an element of V to them as well, but they tend to not be as immediately physical, like actually having to get up out of your seat and do something physical. That's an element of V that the Naiji full-on fanatic understands very, very deeply and very well, which is that in order to truly, for a Naiji to understand, in order to truly be an embodiment of their personal beliefs, they not only need to speak what they say, but they need to also enact what they say. They need to be able to be the kind of person that physically is able to embody their way and what their spirits want from them, because that shows a level of commitment to their ideals, which is more than just being able to speak it. And this relates to the real world experiences, because an Aiji that's been able to listen to their spirits to then actually enact their beliefs in a physical way, they had to learn a lot of natural law in the process of doing that from every individual experience, and every little bit of that has shaped them into becoming more enlightened and more of a hero that they needed to be. And it's just something that is like I'm getting an interesting vision of what that looks like. But it's very powerful in the sense that the Naiji becomes a very seasoned veteran, kind of like warrior kind of person, walking their way, and like with as they walk every step of their way, that their natural law, that natural law tells them that they need to walk. Every experience that they have is an experience that they needed to have, and from those experiences they were tested and they had to learn and grow, and that natural law and that experience in reality shaped them into becoming even better and better and better, constantly just moving up and up and up and forward. It's just, that's what that is.
True. 'Cause, you have these higher ideals, but you want to know that like I'm for real, and only by walking them out with the V do you actually know like I'm for real about this. All right. Next up, Mitchell, you'll go first.
All right.
Here, this is going to be: how does the full-on fanatic operate at a Daryu level? How does this relate to making contact with the world? How does a full-on fanatic relate to the Naiji being a hunter mojo?
Okay. So, let's find out after you. Okay. At the Daryu level, the Fallen Fanatic have a pouncing quality because of the need the Naishi has to corner a particular quarry or to surf a particular wave in service of their higher processes, and such singular worldly opportunities must not be missed or squandered. There can be a kinetic frenzy at the moment of contact, twisting and warping the physical world as needed to go forward or becoming a shapeless, single-minded, unstoppable force of nature. Once there is a conceptual culmination through a physical form of some kind, there can be a ravenous binging period because hunter mojos go long periods of time without energetic feeding, but then gorge once success is made, and Naishi are the hunters with the most intense pervasive hunger. Okay. So, Full-on Fanatic operates at the Daryu level with a sort of pouncing quality, because the Naiji wants to generally try to corner their quarry or surf rare waves that come across. So they sort of pounce on it, that their higher processes tell them they need to, since the kind of opportunities that Naiji generally have to hunt things are pretty rare. So it's very important that they don't miss the opportunity, or that the opportunity isn't lost. So at the moment of contact, there can be sort of kinetic frenzy, and that can go for one of two ways. It could be just sort of shaping the world how you want it to be to get through it, so kind of twisting and warping it as you need to, or becoming more shapeless and just sort of going through and just changing shape as you need to, so that nothing can stop you. Full Fanatic relates to Naishi being a hunter mojo, because once the Naishi have their culmination of their hunting process, which starts from the conceptual down to the physical, there can be like a ravenous gorging quality, since hunter mojos in general go for the longest time without feeding, but then once success is made, there's obviously going to be the need for it, and Naiji especially have the most intense, pervasive hunger, even out of the hunters.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I was on mute there. Good, credit received. Glenn, you're up.
Yes, it looked like you were doing something else.
Yeah, I thought you were thinking like, is that good enough?
Sorry, didn't mean to do that.
That's fun.
Right. The way in which the Full-on Fanatic operates at a Daryu level for the Naiji is very much in this sort of like intense, kind of like frenzied, mannered fashion, because when an opportunity comes for a Naiji to strike and kind of like get their quarry, it can sort of have like this sort of like a panicky quality to it, but they need to sort of stay focused. And because the situation, they tend to go very long situations where nothing is going on at all, and then when it does finally happen, they're just like, whoa, well, I got to get on this now, and then they kind of like attack, and it can. There's very much Daryu, because it's sort of like, that's how Daryu is. It's sort of like panicky, kind of like in that kind of like a feeling, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then
Not necessarily, it doesn't panicky, but distressed. I think it's definitely stressed.
stressed, exactly. And then they kind of like have to kind of like get that quarry in order to get, accomplish that goal, whatever it is, because that it's very fleeting, and they need to accomplish it before it's missed out on, and then who knows how long it'll be before they'll ever, get a chance to get it again. So it's very like, like the thought that comes to mind is that one song from Eminem, "Lose Yourself." You kind of just have to like get that one moment. It's your one moment to shine, to do your thing. Yeah. This relates to how they make contact with the real world, because like they'll summon such an extreme amount of energy in those kinds of moments that it will literally reshape, not literally, but they'll
Not literally.
they will, like, yeah, because you can't literally reshape natural law, but you can push yourself to such extreme limits, your body and what it is that you're capable, whatever it is that you think that is capable of, like what you're able to do. You'll push yourself in those moments as much as you can as an IG to accomplish that goal, and whatever it might be. And it's just very intense and just very powerful.
The key thing to focus on there is liquidy, basically making the world liquidy, or make yourself liquidy until you get where you need to go.
Exactly, yeah. And just becoming like an unstoppable force of nature. Just to get that done. And yeah, yeah, it is very liquidy because it's sort of just all perception. There's not very much discernment going on, I'm thinking.
No, it's like a crashing wave, and it just makes whatever purchase it can to get through the rocks.
Yeah. And this relates the full-on fanatic to the Naiji being a hunter because hunters typically tend to go through very long periods of developing their worldview, vision, either Vi or Nai, for very long periods of time, waiting, just kind of like working on their whatever it is that they're working on. And for the Naiji, this is particularly a very lengthy process because their Nai is the most, it takes the longest to completely get the vision, and then in order to balance that out, when they do finally get their vision, they tend to have like this very intense, very ravenous, gorging period, and that can come out in a lot of different ways. It should be done in a healthy manner, I think, but it is very intense and just very ravenous and just kind of like letting loose and letting go, where they had to just kind of like be very tight and wound up before, and then all of those kind of like strings and like ropes that they had on themselves kind of just become unleashed. And yeah.
Indeed. Ben, take us home.
The Naiji Daryu has a, the the full-on fanatic as it relates to the Daryu has here, I'm gonna read the first sentence again, but I have an idea of how I want to say it. It's just, yeah, so it's a particular way. The full-on fanatic, as it relates to the Daryu for the Naiji, often has a pouncing quality, as there's a need to hit a particular objective at a certain time or a certain particular wave. Otherwise, it'll be missed, so it ends up being very important and will be something that the Daryu will be very concerned with. When the Naiji makes contact with the world, there'll be a frenzy quality. As the Naiji, they'll be kind of twisting of like the kind of physical world around them from the way they perceive it, and also that Naiji can become like a single-minded, unstoppable force in nature. This relates to Naiji being a hunter mojo because there will often be long times of fasting and also a particular key time where it's necessary to strike, where it's necessary to binge. And the Daryu will help the Naiji, figure out what opportunity, like, will tell Naiji when there's an opportunity they might miss, for example. So it ends up being a key part in that.
Cool. Alrighty. Almost there. Stay strong, team. We can do it.
I'm good.
Go. This will be Glenn. You'll go first. This one.
All right.
How does a full-on fanatic operate at the other level? How is this related to the spiritual health of the Naiji? How does this relate to how Naiji tend to use their V in proper context?
All right. At the other level, the full-on fanatic gives Naiji great artistic appreciation and abilities to be able to give physical form to their muse. As a part of this, the full-on fanatic is also focused on the release of existential pressure through various outlets that engage the five senses, which is a healthy tonic of fun for the profoundly serious Naiji. Although V is a physically playful, joyous, and carefree power, with Naiji, this zest for life is usually felt most when purposely participating in peaking rituals, often using artful physical expression to commune with their playfully abstract muse. right? So the full-on fanatic at the other level operates in the sense that the Naiji will achieve or attain a certain sense of like very strong artistic appreciation for whatever it is that they happen to be doing in a sort of like a V sense. Um, and yeah, just one moment. Yeah, the full-on fanatic operates at the other level because it gives them the ability to sort of attain a certain sense of artistic appreciation that allows them to give their other a certain kind of like physical form, a physical expression, which is it's we're talking about the connection that one has with their other and the beauty of that, and so there's an appreciation, there's very artistic, loving kind of relationship there. So it's sort of like when you're cultivating a farm or something and you're doing it with this sort of like love and tenderness and careness, and so appreciating, there's a very very like deep level of caring and appreciation and like respect that one gives to that, and making that sort of activity very sacred in a sense as well. This is related to their spiritual health because Naiji need a way, because they're so tightly wound, being sort of like hunters and stuff. They need to be able to let go of their existential angst and just their all that sort of like pent up energy that they have within themselves. And their other is very very good at being able to help them do that, but in a very healthy way that allows them to sort of have fun and be playfully engaging and just sort of like let go, but not really like let go, but sort of like have fun and just sort of like be more relaxed in a way. Not necessarily stop being an IG, but sort of like allowing themselves to be more liquidy in the moment and sort of just like having more of that kind of like playful energy wash over them and not necessarily like be so with the environment, have a much more better relationship with the environment in general, basically. This relates to how they use their V in proper context because yeah, okay, so even though Naiji are hunters and they do have, and V it's typically thought of as a very playful, fun kind of power that doesn't really seem to have any kind of like purpose in the sense that it does have a purpose, but it doesn't necessarily seem to always doesn't seem to come across as though it has a goal in mind. It's just sort of like gathering a very sort of like going here and going there, gathering berries and gathering this from there. The Naiji, and when it comes to their other especially, they need to be able to do their V, and they need to always keep in mind that the way that their relationship with their V is that it's trying to always get some kind of a task done because they're directives, and so directives are very goal-seeking, goal-oriented kind of like mojos, and they're Naiji especially are very driven to want to go through their entire peak pathway. Although all mojos are, and so they want to be able to do their V, but do it in a very artistic way that allows them to commune with their other in the best way possible, and still be getting something done that's productive, because that's something that they need to always be working towards, I guess. It just needs to be there.
Indeed. Yes. Naiji like, and the ritual now says, we party. And we can party hard, but it's part of the peaking. All right, Ben, you're up next, please.
Yeah, you need to learn how to. It's funny. It's like you gotta party, but you gotta how to party the right way. You gotta learn how to party. It's sort of like you're still working on yourself. In a way.
Exactly. Party to develop oneself.
Yep.
Just one party.
Self-development party. That sounds fun.
Right.
The full-on fanatic, as it relates to the other, operates in such a way that the Naiji gives form to their unconscious Nijai genius. The Naiji has a lot of built-up energy that they need to release, and this comes through five senses outlets, and it's done in such a way that the Nijai other will it'll be kind of a playful experience, and Nijai other helps them a lot with that. The Naiji I didn't actually think about the last question. Like I read the last sentence, but I'm trying to think about how it relates. I didn't actually see the question beforehand, so I'm going to read it again. Okay. The full-on fanatic for the Naiji operates at the other level in such a way as to give physical form to their Nijai unconscious genius. The Naiji So the second question is about spiritual health. Okay. Right, so releasing that pressure. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I should have read the questions first, because it's a good way to check yourself to make sure you're answering it correctly, because sometimes, like, you give information that kind of summarizes it, but it's not like the information you want to give to answer it. So the Naiji full-on fanatic operates on the other level in the sense that it gives physical form to Nijai unconscious genius. With the Naiji, they have a lot of built-up energy that needs to be released, and the Nijai other helps them do this through their five senses. The Naiji will have, while V is a very carefree and playful power, Naiji, with having V in the polar position, will cause them to use their V in a very exclusive way for the purpose of finishing off their peak pathway. So it has to be used in its proper context.
All right, got it. Credit received. Mitchell, take us home.
Right. So at the other level, the Naiji full-on fanatic operates by giving the Naiji a profound artistic appreciation, quality, and abilities that they can use to give physical form to their muse, their unconscious genius. It relates to spiritual health of the Naiji because they build up a lot of existential pressure throughout their story. The Naiji have a very serious, sometimes very dark story, and it gives them a healthy, fun outlet to release some of that existential pressure with, in five senses, visceral sorts of activities. And it is something that is actually probably important to do from time to time. It relates to, but this all relates to how Naiji tend to use beat in proper context, because Naiji tend to really feel the kind of playful, joyous zest for life that B brings when using B in actual peaking rituals, in the kind of sequencing context of their peak pathway, because otherwise sometimes it could just sort of seem like it's just the kind of dull or suppressive reality, just kind of pointless, that doesn't really interest them. But if it's at the right time, they can really get into it. And that's kind of the stage of using the physical expression to reach the other side of their story and connect to that need of the other. And if they're not doing that, it's not going to be as interesting to them.
Good. Yeah, if it's done incorrectly, it leads to a feeling of dissipation. Being dissipated.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's that
right,
it's awful feeling. I've definitely experienced that. Like when you're just doing like these steps just to do it, it's like it doesn't feel good.
It's weird. It's actually draining.
Yeah, like you sometimes you feel like you need to do it because it is like that release.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Naiji can have that where they get involved in these steps because their story is so serious. But it's not. It's still not totally pleasurable.
Definitely.
We talked about it before.
For sure. We have one more beat to do. We'll just call it at this because it's a little longer, Dave. That's fine. We can get more into
Oh, is it already time?
Yeah, we've been cruising. We've been cruising. It's good. All right.
All right.
But I think when we hit the Nijai, we'll be cruising even more because a lot of the stuff we have a bit of format down. We should probably get through at least the earlier sections pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Alrighty, Ben, you will take lead in this last one.
Okay. At the Fumasa level, the full-on fanatic is focused on having...
You don't mind, Ben? Let me just read the questions real quick.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. I admire your enthusiasm. How does the full-on fanatic operate at the Fumasta level? How does this relate to Naiji being representatives of natural law? How does this relate to crafting artifacts? How does this relate to Naiji stage presence?
At the Fumasa level, the full-on fanatic is focused on having apex experiences in order to gain insights into life, including anything from eating unique food to creating new artwork to breaking a world record. These public feats show others that this new experience is achievable and how at least one person did it. As a part of this, Naiji are prone to crafting original artifacts, particularly things that are unprecedented, provocative, and will have permanent influence. Naiji can also forge themselves into a living work of art that represents their beliefs with a preternatural stage presence. All right. Experiences and art experiences. Breaking. At the Fumasta level, the full-on fanatic for the Naiji is focused on having apex experiences in order to gain insights into life, whether that be breaking world records, creating works of art, and so forth. The Naiji having lived these experiences, will be able to show that these experiences can be had by other humans, and that these world records can be beaten. Naiji will have a propensity for crafting artifacts that are unique, unprecedented, and interesting to themselves. The Naiji will often forge themselves into in ways in works of art that are appealing to their spirits and give off a preternatural stage presence.
Indeed. As far on the artifacts, one key element there is the permanency. So it makes something done right that's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like some kind of a movie that the Naiji creates, or some kind of like a monument, or something that's very permanent and has a very lasting impression that
So the world won't ever be the same
stands the
after
test
that.
of time.
It'll permanently change the trajectory of any part of the world that comes in contact with it. All right, Mitchell, you're up.
Okay. On the Fumasta level, the full-on fanatic operates by focusing on having apex experience to gain new insights into life. It's like creating new art for the first time, breaking some kind of physical world record, or anything else that's related to an apex experience. And this relates to Naiji being represented as a natural law because basically they're showing by the fact that they are performing a public feat that something is doable within the realm of natural law. They're kind of showing that for the first time and having a truly apex experience, and they're sort of bringing the natural law into people's eyes where it can actually be seen. And this relates to crafting artifacts because Naiji are prone to crafting them. And those artifacts are often going to be unprecedented, provocative, and have very long-lasting influence because they're supposed to be in line with natural law. And so if that's actually the case, it will continue to have influence through the test of time. It also relates to Naiji stage presence because Naiji basically could turn themselves into a work of art through their performance and their personal style and swagger and how they carry themselves physically, which represents their beliefs in a way that really grabs people's attention.
Good. Yep. Permanent and unignorable. Glenn, take us home.
All right, just a moment. I'm going to see if I can do this. So when it comes to the Fumasta and how it represents itself through the Naiji full-on fanatic, it gives the full-on fanatic a very strong inclination or desire or focus on wanting to have apex experiences that give great insight into life in general. And this can take many shapes and many different forms, but some examples would include like wanting to experience a kind of food that has never been experienced before by them or by anyone else ever. Or maybe it can include sort of like creating some kind of an artwork. Or it can mean trying to break some kind of a worldly record of some kind. This is related to them being representatives of natural law, because oftentimes it means that they have to do some kind of like a public feat that causes them to get a lot of recognition from people, and it shows that when they're able to accomplish that feat, that it was a feat that was capable of being done in the first place, and it shows that other people are also able to accomplish it, but that at least one person was able to accomplish it. The way in which it relates to crafting artifacts is that whenever Naiji do craft artifacts, they tend to be very unprecedented, they tend to be very original, they tend to be things that, you know, that are like very unique and have a very profound kind of like otherworldly quality to them. And yeah, I mean, that's all I can say about that, really.
Just add one, the permanent influence. That's one of the main things about it. It's capturing natural law in some sort of form that will have permanent legs in the world.
Yeah. I wish I remembered to say that.
Of course.
Yeah.
Finish off.
And yeah. So, and then how this relates to the Naiji stage presence is that the Naiji usually need to embody their way, they need to usually take on some kind of like, they need to become the work of art that they are trying to represent, that their spirits want them to be like representatives of. And that usually means oftentimes becoming sort of like a preternatural, I don't know what the word is, preternatural force of nature, sort of like that kind of like stage presence in order to then get across their message, to really just like live out their way and just to sort of like get that across to, you know, the people, the masses.
Indeed. Good job. Yeah, because a lot of times when those things come up, you know, the powers that be were like, just ignore that. Now she's like, oh no, not the way I do it. You won't be ignoring me. All right. That pretty much finishes up there. We only have one pitch left to close out the Naiji. We'll do that next time. And then we'll also begin the Nijai, at least the first section. We should probably blow through that pretty quickly. So for next time, everyone, why don't you bring a song that you like with just the instrumental, and we'll try to play a little bit with that at the end.
Oh, good, I'll have more time to think. Oh, good, I'll have more time to think.
Indeed. All right, good job. We had to really buckle down here, Dave, but we did. It was meaty sections, but good work.
I feel like some of these are going to be longer. You know, it's just kind of how things go. You know, some are harder, some are easier.
Definitely. But I think we all stayed focused and we were on it, so I felt good. We were a good tight team.
Good power leveling session.
Exactly. All right, everyone, I got to let you go because I got to do some stuff with Jailene, but this is really good work. Really good work. All right, everyone. See y'all soon. Have a great night.
Good night, guys.
See ya.
Good night.